This is an RNZ podcast.
It's a really sweet, juicy burst of flavour. It's got a really thin skin, and it just feels like a little wholesome bite of goodness.
Kia ora. Nau mai haramai ki te ao hurahanga. Hello and welcome to Our Changing World. Ko klek and kanan tēnei. Next time you pick a new type of fruit from the supermarket shelves, get it home and find out how it tastes, know that very little has been left to chance. Its flavour, look, sound, feel and smell have all been rigorously tested. This week on Our Changing World, Liz Garton visits the Health and Consumer Sciences team at the Bioeconomy Science Institute to discover some of their tricks.
I'm in a long, skinny room with a hallway along one side and 10 booths side by side down the other. It's quiet. There's nothing on the walls. Each booth has a chair, a little desk and a computer screen. There's also a hatch that opens up to the lab.
So my name's Christina Roigard. I'm the team leader in the Sensory and Consumer Science team here at the Bioeconomy Science Institute, Maiangi Taiao.
Christina is showing me around the consumer research facility, where products that are coming to the market or are part of research programs are tested.
So this is the exciting part. So they come through here, which is our sensory booths, and often they will be sitting in an individual booth.
Ooh, you can hear the volume change.
Yeah, it's a nice, quiet, limited sensory external influences, so people can come in and really experience the product that they're tasting. So it's quite a unique environment. Obviously, it's not a natural consumer situation. You've taken away all the external influences and you're just focusing on the product. Today we've put on some coloured light for you, so we've got a bit of a red hue going on. The reason that we'd use coloured lighting is when we want to mask the colour of a product. So for example, you might have seen some lovely red kiwi fruit come to the market in the last couple of years, and as we're going through the process of finding the right one to put to market, we want consumers to really focus on the taste and the flavour and the texture of those fruit and not be too distracted by the exciting, gorgeous colours that they're seeing.
Christina has some grapes and kiwi berries here to show me.
Actually, if I turn the light on behind you, you might be able to see. So it's kind of got that red hue in the skin and a little bit on the inside as well.
Oh, it really makes a differse to have
really
the light
does.
on, does it?
Yeah.
Or off? Or...
Yeah, it does make a magic. Like these two here, you can see the grapes. So if I bring that out here, and they're just a red and green grape. And then if you just put it in here, it makes this one look darker, but it definitely masks that this one is green. Yeah. And just the expectation that something that is green, for example, you just expect it to have a sourness. So we can go through the whole colour spectrum. Red we usually use just to sort of showcase. Purple or violet we find masks the red colour quite well, but depending on the product, we can go through the whole spectrum.
So the way this testing works is that food is prepped in the lab on the other side of the booths. We'll head through there in a minute. Then consumers are brought in to give feedback.
A lot of the time they're your average consumer. Here in Auckland, we're lucky that we've got a population of 1.5 million diverse people that we can tap into. So depending on the work, we can have an external recruitment company to basically dial up who we need. And that might be people from Aotearoa, New Zealand. They might be from target export markets.
Once the consumer is settled, the hatch is opened. The food, or whatever's being tested, is passed through. And then for the fun part, they get to taste it. After that, the work begins with a survey.
We want to know, obviously, if they like or dislike it, but we want to be able to understand what that experience is so we can make sense of the data and not just have a number.
Have a yes or a no.
Yeah.
So what are some of the questions?
So liking, a hedonic liking score.
Hedonic just means having to do with pleasure. So if the taste brings you pleasure or not.
Where you just go, actually, what's your gut instinct? Do you like this or not? And that can be a really good gauge That's a first instinct response for a consumer. But then we'll give a list of specific, what we call sensory characteristics. And they're things that as a team, we have worked together to develop a concise, consumer-friendly list so that it's user-friendly terminology that they then can just work through and go, is this sweet? Is it sour? Does it have a berry taste? Some of the other questions we include things like just about right scales. So we know that people are actually different in what they prefer. So just to say, I like it or I don't like it, doesn't always tell you what you need to know. So we do things like these just about right scales where you say, in thinking about your preference, where it's just about right for you, is it not sweet enough or much too sweet?
We'll come back to the survey and collecting of this data and what happens with it. For now, we leave the sensory booths and the world takes on a strange, sickly hue.
It's going to look a little bit green as you walk up. That's just your eyes adjusting. So don't panic. We haven't done really anything to your eyes. It'll just last a few seconds.
And we head through to the lab, past a conference room where group sessions can be held. Christina says the sort of data they collect from this room is often from expert panellists who can go into a level of detail your average consumer might not manage. And sessions held in a group setting can often bring context to the overall findings.
The sensory booths that you've just been through are a challenging environment. Sometimes you are putting so much heightened attention to what the experience is that your evaluation might be so targeted that you don't necessarily get an accurate view of everything. So one example that we had is we had a group of consumers actually that were just tasting some potato chips for a methodology development, and we had consumers say, what was sample 223? It was so salty. And then when we brought the bag out, they realised that was one of their favourite types of potato chips. But taking it out of context, taking it away from the social situation, taking it away from the beverage that they might typically have with it, it added a different sensory experience.
And finally, we're in the lab.
And this is where the fun really happens.
Thank you.
Through.
Oh, this looks like a really weird mix of lab and kitchen.
Yeah.
It's a very clean kitchen, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
You've
a
got
very
ovens and microwaves and
it's a very fun, workable space. And yeah, you're right. We've got water bars, we've got ovens, we've got big double door chillers and freezers. So if we have to work on hot products, steamed products, we'll often have fruit boxes from one end to the other. We spend a lot of time developing a design that makes sure that the product that goes through to each consumer is presented in a randomised way, so nobody gets anything in the same order as anyone else. We know that there can be some order effects.
What do you mean by order effects?
So if everybody gets the same sweet sample first, they might all like it a lot more or a lot less than the samples that follow. So by balancing the design throughout, you can randomise that and minimise the effect that it has.
This all seems pretty simple, right? Put some samples in front of people, see what they think. But the prep work is so much more complicated than that.
So the fruit that comes here often has specific bricks measurements done on each fruit that's presented.
The bricks test Christina mentioned there involves measuring the refraction of light to determine the sugar concentration.
So we've got a team of people that work in this building as well, and in the morning they will come in and they will assess each of the fruit. They will get the firmness or the sweetness levels of those fruits, sort them into the needed order, and then we can present that information to the consumer. So then when we get their liking data or their other data, we can link it back to that bigger picture of data. So one little piece of fruit journeys a long way to get to the consumer and has a lot of data points associated with it.
The range of consumer products that run through this lab is super varied.
It really could be anything. Being in the Bioeconomy Science Institute, we've got some amazing fruit breeding programs. We've got work that's been going on for decades in kiwi fruit, apples, pears, berry fruit. There's an amazing hops breeding program. All of the vineyards and grapes and wines that are produced down in Blenheim area as well, all the way down to some of our other orchards where we've got stone fruit and things like that. Also there's seafood, shellfish, meat and those products.
The why of doing this work is pretty obvious. If you can breed a new type of fruit or grape variety for wine that ticks all the boxes, it's going to be an economic hit. But when I asked about success stories, it was more of a survival story that Christina pointed to.
A third kiwi fruit orchard in Te Puke has been confirmed as having the bacterial disease PSA, and 2 others are now in quarantine.
Well, it's been described by one grower we've spoken to as the foot and mouth of the kiwi fruit industry. The newly discovered disease has the potential to devastate New Zealand's $1 billion a year trade in the fruit.
The hit of PSA for the kiwi fruit industry was really, really challenging, and the organisation and the science staff here really rose to the challenge to try and find the new gold kiwi fruit that would be able to replace Hort 16A. So I think for me, having only joined the team 5 or so years earlier, it was really amazing to be part of the journey of running consumer trials, looking at screening the new golds that were coming through and seeing the amazing success of Gold 3 on the market, Sun Gold. So that's one of the amazing
And
stories.
how long is that process?
That was a really quick one. It was only over a few years, I think, that they were able to turn that around. But the initial gold kiwi fruit concept was 20 years from the point of, hey, maybe we should go away from green to something else, to it becoming available on market. That's speeding up over time as we're getting refined technologies, learning more about the breeding technologies and techniques. But yeah, it is a slow process. Science is a slow process, but it's worthwhile to get it right.
Now, the thing about our senses is that they register different things in different ways, as became very clear when Christina handed me a black wine glass.
So what's in these glasses, I think, is really fun, and it's one of the standout moments, I guess, in my time here, where we had a large program of work looking at the genetic differences in people's flavour and aroma perception, and this was one of the ones that came out of it, which is called beta-ionone. Now, I'll let you have a little smell of that first. Don't go too close, but you can look. Yeah.
Oh,
You can smell something there?
it doesn't smell like wine.
No. But it is one of the volatiles that is in Pinot Noir wines. But this is slightly stronger than you would expect it in any fruit.
chemically.
It's quite strong. But what that means is you are of the 50% of the population that can perceive that aroma.
Okay.
And there's 50% of the population that have an anosmia to that. And so no matter how close they put their nose to that glass, they won't be able to smell the aroma that you did.
Anosmia is also known as scent blindness. And even though I could smell a slight chemical scent, I was totally blind to beta-ionone.
Which
I'm
is
just
a
checking that it
floral-
was...
A floral,
Oh, no.
violets.
No.
Okay.
So
yeah.
maybe I wasn't smelling the...
Yeah. So we know
Can I
that.
try again?
Yeah, of course.
I feel like I want to be one of the 50% who can smell it.
There's
Can I put
no
that down?
judgment as to whether you are or not. All it means is that people live in their own flavour worlds, and how they experience flavour and aroma differs depending on who you are. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will like or dislike something more than the other person, but just that your experience is genuinely different. So if you've got some friends that are like, get that coriander out of my meal, that's actually genuine. You're experiencing it in a way that's different to other people, and other people get it, that eat it regularly are like, what's the problem with these coriander haters?
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
now I feel bad that I can't smell it though.
Yeah.
I want to know what everyone else is smelling.
Yeah. So a lot of people will describe it as a Nana's soap. Yeah.
Can you
and
smell
there's-
it?
I can. Yeah. Yeah, I can, and I will for the next 10 days, I think.
It took a while, but once I accepted I would not smell the smell, it made me wonder how you can measure a consumer like of something when we're experiencing everything so differently.
So we break our data down into the normal stats where we're looking at averages, we're looking at trends, we're looking at patterns between things, but we try not to just look at an average, for example, but also to link it to why is it that there was a group of people that really didn't like it? Was it that there was something to do with that particular orchard of apples? And there, being able to track our data all the way back through the process, that's where the magic can really happen. Being able to look at trends, being able to infer from the data, being able to look at what we call some penalty lift analysis, where you go, if the fruit were actually perceived as too sour, Did that mean that there was a drop in liking scores? That was a whole point. And that way you can give some information back to the growers, back to the breeders, and you go, this is where it makes a difference. This is where there might be a little bit of wriggle room and a little bit of forgiveness, because we know, with fruit especially, that there's some variability that naturally happens anyway.
One of the really exciting pieces of work being done by the team is helping discover future fruit flavours. Christina says there's a specialist flavoromics team which has come up with essences that mimic particular flavours. They can be given to testers as a drink, but drinking something is quite different to biting into a juicy piece of fruit. Scientist David Ginn has been working to make tasting the essences more of a textural experience.
What we are trying to do is we try to build different layers around that, that drink. You imagine like several different layers of bubbles around it. Yeah.
So these sort of pearls or beads that are fruit flavoured that go with it.
Like
so
boba tea.
You're getting kind of like a miniature version of a boba tea.
Okay.
And that was what we were simulating off, really, is giving an experience to a consumer that was like something they would naturally experience.
Now, this feels a little backwards to me. You find the flavour you want and then have to go off and grow the fruit? But Christina says the flavours are already there, maybe just not in the perfect package.
It may be a fruit that doesn't look particularly good, but it tastes amazing, or it doesn't store particularly well, but it has these flavour attributes. So the breeding team know that through their methods they can achieve it, and they just want to be able to help make some decisions about, is this a target? Whether or not that translates right through to the fruit itself when that happens is that's their challenge to work with, but we can certainly say how the consumers are responding. There's a couple that within the team, we just think this would just be so exciting if there was a fruit that tasted like this.
This work being done by Christina and the team is helping shape what we see on the supermarket shelves. Dr. Roger Harker, the principal scientist in the Health and Consumer Sciences team, says it's evolved based on something humans have done for centuries.
The world has always been changing, from the, if you go along the Silk Road and that concept that actually people picked up fruit and the ones that tasted nicer got carried further. So we've just moved from that into a more formal breeding program where there is some economic value to growers of having something that tastes better, and there is a ongoing drive to always have a product that is more pleasant to eat. But the methodologies that we use have changed pretty profoundly. So when we started in 1982, we developed what was a trained panel where you brought people in, you screened them, that they were sensitive to the flavours, you checked that they actually had good flavoured vocabularies and texture vocabularies. So they were almost like you were expecting people to be little machines. And that was based on a presumption that people all describe flavours in different ways, so it becomes scientifically really difficult to actually condense all that information if everyone's used a different descriptor. And now we actually use consumers, and we use what we call a kata methodology, where you're just ticking which flavours exist. And we find that we get really precise information just from general people.
The kata methodology Roger mentions means check all that apply, and he says it was predominantly developed here in New Zealand. It means anyone can follow the simple survey, choosing all the applicable words to describe what they're tasting. This allows for a bigger, more diverse group of consumers to take part. And different personality types are factored in too.
There are certainly studies that has been the case where you're asking about, foods that inspire novelty and uniqueness, and, we have people that are like, food is for sustenance and that's it. As long as I'm fed, I don't really care about anything else. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum that live and breathe for excitement and novelty and experience. So I think that there's other ways of asking questions that tell you the psychographics of the person.
So in the way a demographic tells you who a consumer is, psychographics tell you why consumers behave in certain ways. A consumer's psychographics are based on things like personality, interests and attitudes.
We've done a lot of work in the team with a scale called the food neophobia scale, which tells you whether or not people are more or less receptive to new foods. Are they willing to try things or not? So experience tells us that the people that are less willing tend not to come to us and be like, hey, these things. So, you have to understand that when you're using those scales, that there's a certain type of person that will come.
Christina says one of the exciting things about this work is that there are often surprises, including one involving fish.
They were finding some differences in the consumer evaluations of the fish, and they couldn't quite figure out what it was. But some of the fish were much firmer texture than the others, and it turned out that they actually had a left-handed versus right-handed fileter, and so the fish were actually different depending on whether they, yeah.
I think it was the left hand and right hand side of the fish, because when you fill it with one hand, the way you handle the two sides is a little bit different. We hoped for a while it was, because I think it was farmed fish, that it was the way they were swimming and one side of the fish was stronger than the other. And we were so disappointed when we worked out it was not that, it was the actual process.
And another involving cheese.
We needed a control sample in there to make sure that we were getting the type of data that we thought we would get. So we introduced a sample that we thought consumers wouldn't like, because we were thinking about it as a cheese. So what it was an apricot coconut flavoured cream cheese, and consumers loved it. And what it really said to us is, when you get into this environment, you have all external cues removed and you're focusing just on what's in front of you, you can transport yourself to any situation. And people were like, this is a lovely sweet treat. This is a lovely dessert cheese. And that was a surprise to us. And I think it showed the power of the sensory facility and makes us aware that when we put people into this environment, we have to recognise that it's a unique environment for them to be tasting. It has lots of benefits, lots of advantages for just focusing on the product, but we know that the consumer experience is much more complex than that.
Surveys are set up differently depending on the project. They usually last about an hour, which includes tasting and completing the questionnaire. They keep it short to ensure no sensory or cognitive fatigue creeps in. And logistics are really important and often incredibly valuable.
Yeah, logistics is huge for us. Yeah, you have to be really good at reading 3-digit codes upside down, making sure that you're checking it as it goes through, tracking every single sample as it goes through the booth. Yeah, you've got to be on your toes when you're in here, that's for sure.
The attention to detail required to do these studies properly, because you get one thing wrong and you've destroyed, an enormous amount of work. So by the time we get many of the samples, there's a lot of work already got into them. It's not like they're a product that someone has just pulled out of a supermarket. We had a study that we ran in Japan a number of years ago, and it was all on paper. And we went through all of this. By the time we'd sorted the fruit from New Zealand orchards with a scientific process, then it's probably, it was $500,000 worth of fruit. You then go over, and Japan is quite an expensive place to go. And we came to a point where we realised that we had a stack of paper that was worth maybe $1 million worth of data that we had to get back to New Zealand. And how were we going to do that? Because if it got lost, you couldn't post it. There wasn't enough room in our suitcases.
I'm picturing
so
a briefcase with the locks on it and a couple of security guards.
So in the end, we realised that we had to just leave someone over there to enter the data, to bring it back, because that was the only way we could be secure. And pieces of paper, nobody would insure them to what it had cost for the experiment.
With New Zealand having such a reliance on exports, a lot of work goes into looking at how some of our key markets will react to new products. Physically going to the markets isn't always feasible, but there are workarounds. David describes studies they've run with newly arrived Chinese immigrants.
We would like them to be in New Zealand from China, say, less than 3 years. longer than 3 years, probably their tasting palette will change a little bit, probably more like Kiwi style. They maybe, probably they will still like, sweet fruit, for example, but probably they may be more into a sour side. Yeah, so probably their taste bud will be quite different to, the typical Chinese consumer back to China. Yeah, in our typical, conceptual, catalyst, we ask them, after you eat this fruit, you feel like happy, you feel satisfied, those kind of interesting. Yeah, but because that was a typical group of, Chinese consumers, we deliberately add yin and the yang, and heaty, it's cooling, those kind of thing. So it's very, specifically, tailored to fit to that segment of, our target, participants.
But it's always best not to make assumptions about what the testers might find tasty, as Christina points out.
So we had a great example with some apricots. Apricots are typically enjoyed by Chinese consumers as a very sweet, soft, juicy fruit. But the selection that came out was a firm, crisp and sweet apricot, which was equally loved. So you don't always know what you like until you get to experience it.
It's obvious these guys love their work and the end result is good for everyone.
The goal for us as a team is really about bringing good, healthy, nutritious food as accessible to as many people as possible. And if you get people improving their diets, getting enjoyment out of food, finding some novelty and excitement in a crazy world, then we feel that that's satisfying enough.
Are you all foodies?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
It's not a question.
I think we attract people to the field that are naturally interested in food. I think sometimes the scientific element of what we do can take the fun out of that in our personal lives a little bit. And as much as it's fantastic to work on a whole range of products, having to quality control beer or wine at 9 o'clock in the morning, it's a tough gig, I'm sorry. It's a tough gig. People don't appreciate tasting chocolate and making sure that we're getting a whole lot of samples, but I appreciate that people probably think that we've got a pretty good job.
Thanks to Christina Roigard, Dr. Roger Harker and David Jin at the Bioeconomy Science Institute. This episode was produced by Liz Garton, script editing was by Phil Vine, and sound engineering was by Corey Fuimaono. As ever, you can email us at ourchangingworld@rnz.co.nz if you've got feedback or episode suggestions, and you can learn more by visiting rnz.co.nz/OCW. You can also find the link to sign up to our monthly newsletter in any of the episode show notes. Tēnā koe I whakarongo mai. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Claire Kincannon. Have a great week. Kia pai, the wiki.